Welcome to the University of Michigan Dentistry Podcast Series, promoting oral health care worldwide.
What you'll need for this particular part is your sprue wax. This is a 12 gauge sprue, which we'll use a Y sprue to sprue the pattern. We'll set that aside for now. This is the sprue former and the casting ring. We need to get the lining material prepared, and we need to finish up the sprue former. So we're going to set the pattern aside now and work on this for a few minutes. You take a small piece of utility wax, and what I like to do is just warm this slightly over the Bunsen burner flame. That's a little too warm, obviously, but that gets it into a little more of a workable condition. And what we need to do is fill up this depression in the sprue former. Now, I realize you've done some of this last year, and you may in fact have some wax in there already, and that's fine. Once the wax is in there and is still usable, there's no need to pull it out and replace it with new wax. We're just going through this to show you what this needs to look like. And you can just mold this wax into a bullet shape to start with. Now obviously there's some excess here and we need to smooth it up, but that's the ballpark of what this is going to look like. You can take an instrument and start to get rid of some of this excess wax. And always remember, what you're doing here is you are forming the funnel through which the molten gold will flow to get to your pattern. And you want that funnel to be smooth without any irregularities which could hamper the flow, or even worse, break off some investment on the way in and carry that investment to your margin. So once you have that type of shape established, we need to warm it and smooth it, and what I'm going to do here is try to show this by bringing the Bunsen burner into the field here. And you just pass that gently through the flame. I know that's going to be tough to see, but that has to be just flowed softly so that forms a very smooth shape. Okay. Now we need to prepare a little recess in that shape for the sprue after we finish spruing the pattern. So you'll take a number 7 spatula, that's a very convenient instrument for this, and just warm that up and open into the area and create a little hole here. Take away the excess wax for now. See that? Good. And then we'll take it back to the Bunsen burner and just flow that up again so that the sides are again smooth. And we have the sprue former ready and waiting for the sprued wax pattern. Now we'll set that aside for a moment and we'll get the liner prepared for the casting ring. Generally, the liner is either cut off of a roll. In this case, this is a pre-cut length that I got from the desk. This is too long, so we need to roll it up, place it inside of the ring, and we only want one thickness. So we want to hold that inside the ring, and then either with an instrument or a pencil, mark a point so that if it slips out of your hand, you won't lose that. And then trying to hold this together and maintain that relationship. Pull that out of the ring and turn it a little bit, just like that. And take your scissors and cut at a slight diagonal through the two pieces, so you are cutting away the end. And what that will accomplish for you is it will give you a fitted surface, and if you need to make it a little bit longer or a little bit smaller, you can slide it along that edge to make up whatever slight difference you get due to this not fitting exactly. Now we'll reposition this back inside of the ring, and you'll see what I mean here. If you really push firmly, you can see that the space opens up a little bit, but if you slide it a little bit, you can get that very, very close. Now we have the ring inside in its correct position. Now if you'd like to ensure that that will stay there, there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking a little bit of utility wax and just tacking down the corners right there, just tacking it right up against the ring, and then rotating it over and doing the same thing over here with just a very little bit of utility wax. You don't want a lot of wax in there. Okay, now this ring is all set to go. In addition to the preparation of the ring and sprue former, you should have your vacuum spat ready, and your hose, and your graduated cylinder with 15 cc's of water, and your investment, so that when we finish the margins, sprue, and put this all together, it will only be a few minutes between the removal off of the die and the actual investment procedure. So let's set these aside now and go back to our pattern. Okay, we have checked the occlusion. We're happy with that. We know we have good proximal contacts. The only things that we need to do now are go back and verify our margins and then sprue this. Okay, now we are a little bit short of the margin there, so we'll warm the instrument slightly and just start to reflow this area into the margin. If you have proper heat in your number 7 spatula, you'll find that you can almost burnish these margins closed, remove any excess all at the same time. We want you to get this to the correct margin, and as you're burnishing, be sure you get the wax nicely adapted and that you don't leave any voids at the margin. You can use your finger to burnish that a little bit. And you do this circumferentially. I don't know if we can see this. There's a little tiny overextension right there. And we'll go in with our wax instrument and just pick that right up. These are all tiny little details, but if you take care of the details now in wax, you'll find it much easier to finish your casting. Cutting back an overextension in gold is one of the harder things, and more often than not you end up overdoing it and you end up short and having to redo the whole job. Okay, now there we go. The margins are nicely adapted. When we lift the pattern, we can see that they go right back to place. And then we'll do that all the way around the pattern. All right. Now put that down and we'll get the sprue ready. You need about 1.5 inches of sprue material to start with. And we're going to do a Y sprue, which means we fold this over, form a nice smooth Y. Remember, again, this is part of that funnel that is going to bring the gold into your pattern. Put my hand behind there for a little contrast. You can see the Y. Now, one thing that we can do at this point is add a little bit of wax to the stem to strengthen that area and make the handle of this Y sprue a little more solid while we're attaching it to the pattern. Turn over to the other side and do exactly the same thing. Okay. It's important that you put some wax in the middle of that arm right there so that when the gold flows in, it has a nice smooth flow and that there's not a point of investment left there to break off. So you want that to be smooth and flowing into each of those arms of the Y. Right now they're still a little bit long. You need enough length in these arms to attach to the appropriate spots on your pattern and still be able to get a separating disc in to cut your pattern free at a later time. These arms would be too long, so we're going to remove what we don't need with a warm instrument. And we are almost ready to go now. Alright, we are going to be spruing this pattern on the point angles. Now it really doesn't make a difference whether you go diagonally this way or this way. Every pattern will be different. What you need to do is look at the pattern carefully to determine what areas were critical to the occlusion. And you want to sprue to areas that will have the least effect on your occlusion, so you won't have to do a lot of grinding and adjusting after you remove the casting from the sprue. So in this case, we will go from the distal buccal corner over to the mesiolingual corner, because with this pattern, that was the most convenient area to use. Now, what I like to do is add just a little bit of warm wax to these ends and very carefully use that wax to attach the sprue there. Okay, we have the sprues in place here. Now I like to use the smaller P.K. Thomas No. 2 instrument to add a little bit of an addition of wax to flow each of these sprue arms into the wax pattern. Again, we're keeping in mind you want this to be a nice smooth connection, but you don't want it to be too big because you've worked so hard to establish this nice anatomy that you don't want to have to eliminate it all with the addition of this wax. Now, I realize this might be hard to see everything, but we are connecting each of these sprues circumferentially with a little bit of extra wax so that the wax, when it melts out, leaves a smooth, empty chamber for the gold to flow through. Okay, now let's try to turn this around and give you a little background so that we can see that clearly. Alright, now in removing this, it's very important that you don't take this sprue and pull. It's not a handle at this point. It becomes the handle after it's off the die. So we want to take this pattern off very carefully and gently like you did before. And then once it's released, now we can use the sprue as the handle, and it's very important that we do not touch this pattern anymore. Otherwise it can distort very easily. We can take a quick look, make sure we have our internal adaptation the way we want, but beyond that, we shouldn't touch this anymore. So we can set our die aside, we bring the sprue former back. Let's get a clean background here. There we go. And We very carefully place this in. Now there's a little wax down there holding me up, so I'm not going to force it in and distort the pattern. We're going to take an instrument and warm up this surface in here a little more and melt it. And then try again. Okay. Position that sprue into the former. At this point, it would be a good idea to hold your ring up and make sure that when the ring is in place, you'll have the necessary 6 to 7 millimeters of investment beyond your pattern. I'd like to put this in just a little bit more because I think I need to have a little bit more room up there. Okay, now that we have the sprue in place, the only thing that's left to do is to flow the wax from the sprue former into the actual Y sprue stem. Again, making sure it's nice and smooth. And once we're done with that, we'll be ready to go ahead and take this over to the investing machine. A little irregularity there. Okay. Now, again, visualize the fact that the gold will be running into this area. The funnel will bring the gold to the junction of the Y. The round, smooth contours will allow free flow of the gold up into the pattern. And now we can take this. Now, before you place this, it's important that we wet the liner. Now, I have a bowl here. We don't necessarily have to look at that, but I have a bowl of water, and I'm going to wet that liner because what we don't want to do is have a dry liner that will draw water out of the freshly mixed investment and create a problem with our expansion. So this should be moistened with water. Now very carefully put this into place, and be careful that you don't nudge up against the pattern. The pattern should be in position. Nothing should be touching the pattern. The liner is in place, and you know that you have the liner adjacent and around that pattern circumferentially. Okay, we've taken this pattern, and I've taken the ring off and put some debubblizer on because I forgot to do that while doing the original demonstration. So the pattern has been coated with a thin layer of debubblizer. We're now ready to invest. We have 15 cc's of water. We add the package of investment, and we'll mix that up quickly. Until all the powder is wetted. Put the unit together and hold this for 20 seconds. One thing you should be sure is to look up here and make sure that you're pulling a vacuum between 25 and 30. Okay, there's 20 seconds. Now, turn your mixer so that the spatula inside the bowl is horizontal, and vibrate the material to the bottom, and then slowly begin to rotate and turn it in to your ring. Once you feel secure that you have all the material in the ring, you can break the vacuum. And begin to pull the ring out. Make sure you have enough. In this case, we have plenty. In fact, we're going to take a little bit off. vibrate it down, and now this is ready to go to the water bath.
You've been listening to a presentation from the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, which is dedicated to supporting open learning and open educational resources. This recording is licensed under the Creative Commons. It may be reused and redistributed for nonprofit use. Please attribute materials to the University of Michigan School of Dentistry and redistribute under this same license. For more information on how this and other University of Michigan School of Dentistry recordings may be used, visit www.dent.umich.edu/license.